Gochref mila mach agut a cahilig. Bevwalin or mwichros a gavwal live a sukt un made ato data eg Éireann san un Ukraine. It is an honor to be addressing you senators today and to have this platform of your honorable house to speak to the people of Ireland and to the people of Ukraine in Ireland. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity, which our delegation appreciates wholeheartedly as unique, but also much needed in this difficult time for Ukraine. This address could not have been possible, though, without the dedication and work of two people in this room. Senator Garrett Éireann and Senator Barry Ward, thank you. Thank you for the courage for coming to Ukraine a while back, for witnessing with your own eyes what Russia has done to our country, what scars it has left on our people. And thank you for not being quiet on the topic of Ukraine ever since, and for the support that you have provided. Today, the cities that you visited a while back, Irpin, Borodanka, Bucha, they are slowly healing. They are coming back to normal with summer greenery masking the bombarded buildings and people slowly but still coming back. In Kiev, life sometimes seems more than normal, until it isn't. Until the air sirens remind you several times a night that you are still living the nightmare of all-out war, which started on that morning at 5 a.m. on the 24th of February this year. When Russia escalated its 8-year aggression against Ukraine to unprecedented levels, to really an all-out war in the middle of Europe, in the middle of the 21st century. And today, 20% of Ukraine is occupied. That's 3 times more than just under 4 months ago. 20% of Ukraine is actually 125,000 square kilometers. That's almost twice the size of Ireland. Those thousands of kilometers are not just empty fields or cliffs or whatever one might imagine as empty spaces. 125,000 kilometers is 2,500 municipalities, villages, towns, cities, where millions of Ukrainians are forced to live under the Russian flag, and thousands are forced to die for the Ukrainian flag, for the right to be Ukrainian. Can you imagine going through the content of your phone, deleting pictures and messages that might signify that you are Irish every time you want to visit a corner store, in your own country, actually? Ukrainians in occupied Kherson do that every time before leaving the house, lest Russian soldiers find anything incriminatingly Ukrainian during checks at checkpoints. And can you imagine queuing up for water in the 30-degree heat and fainting? Or watching excavators clear up the rubble of what was your home, only to see limbs of those who were once your neighbors, but are no more? Imagine not being able to bury your family or your loved ones. Imagine not even knowing where they are. That is what Ukrainians in occupied Mariupol live every day. Imagine being a mother, saying goodbye to your baby who hasn't lived even 5 months. Imagine being a father, having to live the rest of your life with the image of the body of your son killed, and you survived, and you have to live the rest of your life. This is the reality of hundreds of Ukrainian parents, from east to west. Now, this is a reality that I couldn't imagine, so I took the other difficult reality that Ukrainian parents must make. On 1st of March, I made the decision to send my children away. I am a mother of 3. The youngest turned 1 on the 1st of June. 3 months of my youngest daughter's first life were spent without her mother. My other daughter is 7, and she got used to seeing me twice a month, just on weekends when I get the time to visit. My son, every time before I go back to Ukraine, he comes to me with the same question: why can't he go back with me? And my answer is always the same: I gave you life. I gave you life to live. 288 Ukrainian children are dead. they have been killed by Russian soldiers. 527 Ukrainian children lie wounded in hospitals, sometimes disabled for life. Today, Putin is stealing the childhood of Ukrainian children. Russia is taking away their right to education. Instead of learning math and science, our children are learning the difference between hiding places in case of an artillery attack or an air raid. Instead of picking out prom dresses and partying because of the last hours of school, celebrating graduation, our high school children are taking photos on the ruins of their schools. 184 schools have been razed to the ground by Russian forces. Almost 2,000 school buildings have been damaged. Russia is stealing Ukraine's future. And it's not a figure of speech. 250,000 Ukrainian children have been forcefully removed from Ukraine, from the care of their families, from their homes and into Russia. 234,000 deported Ukrainian children to be converted into Russians. All these are not just stories. All this is evidence of a crime, an international crime, the crime of genocide, that Russia is committing right now in Ukraine against Ukrainians. The Irish nation today is doing more than their fair share of the international effort to prevent and stop the crime of crimes, the crime of genocide. Ireland has opened its doors from the first days of war. The visas were cancelled, as easy as that. People's homes were opened up. Today, 35,000 Ukrainians, mostly women and children, found refuge here in Ireland. At the beginning of the month, in this very room, this House voted to recognize Russia's actions against Ukraine as genocide. And we thank you for this, wholeheartedly, thank you. But today, we also humbly ask this House to go a step further and recognize another act of Russia against Ukraine as genocide. In 1932-1933, Russia created a man-made famine, leading to the death of something between 4 and 7 million Ukrainians. Russia wasn't punished then, as it is not being punished now. The Russians, as a result, they just got inspired to do more evil. 90 years on, it's about time to restore the historic justice and send the message that the free world has no room for appeasing criminals and tyrants. The Holodomor must be called for what it is, a genocide of the Ukrainian nation, and Ireland can lead by example here on this issue too, by passing and recognizing an act and urging other nations to follow suit and recognizing the Holodomor, the Ukrainian famine of 1932, as genocide. We must all have no doubt that the only reason Russia is doing what it is doing now is just because it can, because it was let to do this. For centuries, Russia has been allowed to get away with aggression, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Not once has it been punished or stopped. As a consequence of appeasement, Russia developed into an empire of evil that it is today. Thinking itself more sovereign than other nations, and thinking that it's okay to attack other countries and invade. As an international community, we all have the responsibility and the moral duty to stop and put a firm stop to all the crimes that Russia is committing. How do we do this? By securing a victory for Ukraine. And that's a process which requires several steps. And then in the next few weeks, the Ukraine's bid for candidate status to the EU will be considered. We are grateful for Ireland's unwavering support in this matter, but we must ask your help in minimizing doubts in those EU member states that still have them. In the next few months, we will also need victory on the battlefield. When I say we, I don't mean just Ukraine, I mean all of us, Ireland, the EU, the global community as such. Protracted conflict leads only to more death and more wars. And Russia is good at protracted conflicts. This is what the game they played in 2014, and they were allowed to get away with it, so they are trying this again in 2022. Their aim, their utmost aim, is to decompose Ukraine, and with it, to decompose the very concept of sovereignty in the world. While strengthening Ukraine, we ask also for efforts to be exerted and mobilized to weaken Russia. We are grateful for the leadership your government and both houses have done on pushing on sanctions against Russia and the non-lethal aid you have provided for the defense efforts in Ukraine. Like no one else, Ireland understands the need for Ukraine to be victorious and for this war to end as quickly as possible for the sake of freedom and democracy. In the years to come, we will need yet more help to restore and rebuild. Ireland is leading discussions on this front too. But it shouldn't be Ireland paying, or the EU, or any other country in the world. It is not Ireland or the EU or any other country in the world that has caused the damage and the losses in Ukraine. It is Russia, and Russia must pay. Every euro invested in the rebuilding of Ukraine must be returned by Russia. For that to happen, Putin and his war criminals must be brought to justice, and a system of reparation must be put in place. Aggression stops not with the withdrawal of forces, but with guarantees of non-repetition, apologies and reparations by the party that did wrong, by Russia in this case. This is the formula to victory, and the help we need from you is what we need, what the world needs to make it happen. To celebrate the victory, we hope to welcome all of you, all of the members of this House, with the Kahir look, of course, in Ukraine in a very, very near time. Thank you.